Hey, it's Mazzy here and welcome back to my channel. This is a ranking video of the Who catalog. That great band with Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, Keith Moon, and John Entwistle. I've been doing a series of ranking videos, so there is a playlist here. If you just stumbled across this because you're searching for the Who or rock and roll, or my face popped up with this picture. Yes? No? Related? Separated at birth? Then maybe you stumbled across this and you're checking it out. But I have other videos, also videos on psychedelia. I grew up in San Francisco, and I have those kind of videos of music I grew up with, and was into jazz records, all kinds of things. So all my ranking videos are obviously my picks, where I am in the moment with these, with the catalogs of these artists. I'm recording this in 2021, so this is how I see this music now. Now, I grew up with these records. I bought them pretty much as they came out. Sometimes you get a different perspective, different than buying a record that came out 10, 20, 40 years ago, and you're just getting into it, depending on your age and how you're getting into music. So anyway, I have 13 records here, the basic Who catalog, and I'm going to go through it and talk about what I like or maybe don't like about these records. Okay, starting number 13, it's hard. It's hard to like this record. You saw that coming, didn't you? This is a problematic record. This is 1982, and this is, during the post-punk period of the Who, and I think the Who should have known better, and they still were trying to be that stadium band that hit big with Who's Next, after doing all the mod records and the pop records and the early, really tight, great rock and roll records. And of course, Pete Townsend's thematic epics. Musically, it's kind of a yawner of a record. The songs aren't very good. It's mushy. That's really a technical term. It just doesn't have great songwriting. And I could be wrong on this, but the thing about the Who albums in the 80s, from my point of view, I think Pete Townsend almost kept the best songs for his solo career, because I really like his solo records. I usually am partial to his voice, even though Roger Daltrey has the more classic rock and roll voice. I usually like the mix, and I like, that's why I like a lot of the demos over the years that Pete Townsend's done for Who songs, hearing his vocal versions of some of these songs. But around this period, his songs, in fact, I think this year is the same year All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes came out, amongst my favorite of the solo Pete Townsend records. So I'm just saying, this is number 13, It's Hard by The Who. Number 12, Face Dances. This is another example. What I do love about this is the cover curated by the great modern artist, collage artist, Peter Blake. If you don't know who Peter Blake is, I know I'm getting a little tangent here, talking about the art over the music, but I'll get into that in a minute. Peter Blake designed the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Peter Blake designed the cover of 2 Who albums. He designed the cover of Stanley Road by Paul Weller. He curated this. This is a lot of modern British artists at the time. Just to name a few, there's Richard Hamilton did this portrait of Pete Townsend. Richard Hamilton, a modern artist who created the concept of the Beatles' White Album. Now some may say, what's that? What does it take to do that? Great modern artist, minimal artist, love him. That's Richard Hamilton. This is a painting of John Entwistle by the great Clive Barker, and Clive Barker also painted the back cover here. Peter Blake did this. You can tell his work is very collage-like. And there's several other artists, including David Hockney. It's David Hockney's picture of Robert Daltrey. And then a bunch of other artists that did the various portraits of the Who. The irony of this also is not a great album, and the song Face Dances Part 2 is not on this record. In fact, maybe we wouldn't have even known there was a song called that until, as I just said a minute ago, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, a great album by Peter Townsend, has the song Face Dances Part 2. I think that would have, some people felt it was going to be on this record. Pete Townsend says no, he wrote it after this record. It's kind of a coincidence, or maybe he just named it after this record because it's a great song. It would have really lifted this album because the songwriting isn't very good. Nothing really stands out for me in my taste. So coming in at number 12, Face Dances by The Who. This is, I believe, 1980-81, this record. Let's see, I think there's a poster here too, so you might as well get the full. I mean, the artwork is incredible, amongst the best of their records. Number 11, another Peter Blake cover. This is the final Who album, at least up till this point. It's almost not the Who anymore. Of course, we have half a Who. I'm tempted to go into Dr. Seuss' diatribe, but I will refrain. Half a Who, we all know what that's about. Still an important band, still Pete Townsend pretty much putting these things together, and then Roger Daltrey's doing his vocals separately. So it doesn't have the organic feeling, although Pete did a lot of that in the old days himself. The middle period, really kind of getting things together, demos, really tight demos, and then recording with the band. Again, this record actually is not bad. It's a good rock and roll record. There's some great tracks on it. Another Peter Blake cover, which is really wonderful. And they take these different scenarios from other Who records, what the Who were influenced, what they wrote about. I really like this packaging. The back is kind of, I think, could have been a little better. Ball and Chain was the first single, which is a pretty good rocker. I think this is a pretty decent album for a bit of farewell. I kind of hope it's a farewell. I'm not one to wanting reunion concerts, reunion albums and everything. Not that they should stop playing. Play their songs. Unless Pete comes up with something really amazing, I'd almost rather have him just continue his solo career and have at it. But here we go. The Who. Just called Who, actually. The album's called Who. Coming in at number 10, The Who by Numbers. Great cover art by John Entwistle. I love the cover on this. This is 1975, so they were still into their arena rock. This is several years after Who's Next, 4 years after Who's Next. Slip Kid's a good song. The songs are better here. Squeezebox is, I remember when I heard Squeezebox, it's one of those like what the fuck moments of a song. Mama's got a squeezebox on her chest. Really? Really, Pete? But there's some decent songwriting on here, and it's a better record. This is obviously the pre-punk period. The next year, punk would start percolating in New York and the West Coast and in the UK. So I think this is a medium quality record. Great songs, but not amazing songs. So this is coming in number 10. I'm in the top 10, but that is Who by Numbers by, of course, who knows. Coming in at number 9 is The Who, Endless Wire. I think a lot of people miss this record. It came out on vinyl as 2 records. I actually really liked this record. When this came out, I got the compact disc and I would play it a lot. There's a lot of dynamics in the record, and I don't mean audio dynamics. There is that too, but a lot of acoustic sounds, banjo sounds, organic instruments a little more than usual on a Who album. It's almost as if Pete was kind of working on his demos and then he added everyone else later, which may well be. I'm not getting into that part of it. I don't love the cover. I think the cover is a little cheesy 80s-like for my taste, but I really like the music. I think the songs are well-positioned, well-written, and the vocals by both Pete and Roger are really good on this record. So I love this record. This is 2006 it came out. Again, number 9, The Who, Endless Wire. Coming at number 8, Who Are You? Who? we could all live probably on just the royalties that Pete Townsend makes on CSI, CSI Vegas, CSI New York, CSI Miami, using Who songs at the beginning. In a way, it sort of wrecked these songs for some of us, because those are everywhere. But the Who, especially Pete Townsend, has sold out. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. He licenses images more than a lot of other, although Ray Davies does too. And I think it should be the choice of the artist. It doesn't bother me at all when someone licenses their music to commercials or television shows or soundtracks, obviously. It gets it to a new audience. Hopefully they go in and buy the records. But some older people might find it objectionable that their music is being hawked. But I don't mind it so much. Of course, Who Are You is the final song on here. He's doing, more of his electronics added in here like he did on Who's Next. This is 1978, so this is just as, punk was percolating. So it's a record, and again, this is the last record, I think, with the great tempestuous Keith Moon on drums. I like this record a lot. I like the synthesizers. I like co-produced by Glenn Johns and John Astley. Sister Disco. That is a thing that happened. Those of you who were living around in the late 70s, this period, all the major artists did their disco shtick, whether they, jumped on it just all full frontal, calling something disco, or they did something like the Rolling Stones with Miss You, or Paul McCartney doing some of the Coming Up, and that was 1980 actually, but some disco type of things. Good Night Tonight, I guess, would be the McCartney one that kind of jumped on that bandwagon. I like the cover. I like the gear. That's kind of a cool record cover for the time by the great photographer Terry O'Neill. This is a good record. Again, number 8, Who Are You? Coming at number 7, a quick one. This is the Who's second album, and this is where Pete Townsend really started getting creative, having a vision of what the Who would become, a direction for the Who. This is 1966, so the year of Revolver, where bands were trying something a little different. And the irony is, the Who were considered still a singles band. I didn't get this album right when it came out. The first 2 records I got later on, probably in the late 60s, not maybe 69, 70 even. There is a centerpiece in this album called A Quick One, While He's Away. And you can see them perform in the Rock and Roll Circus, the Rolling Stones TV extravaganza with Jethro Tull and John and Yoko and Taj Mahal, of course, and the Who. And it's a really good mini opera. And obviously there's some things that he would take on and expand on later for Tommy. It has Whiskey Man, Cobweb and Strange. Of course, the one kind of funny song that is the most infamous song probably by John Entwistle, and that's Boris's Spider. But I like this record, and I think this is a really changing point. It's not a perfect record, but the seeds were planted here of what Pete Townsend would do very soon afterwards. Coming at number 6. Now, this to a lot of people is their number 1, 2, or 3 record, but it ain't mine. Quadrophenia. What a magnificent opus. What a thick, overwrought, complicated story with a really kind of non-ending. I won't get into the whole story of it. You can read the lyrics, read the book, but it's obviously Pete Townsend's second rock opera after the Who. This came out in 1973, and there's some great pieces on here. It's a beautiful cover, beautiful package with this wonderful book in it. Kind of tells the whole story, shows photographs. So this is an elaborate piece of art, elaborate of the times, of the mods, of England, of motorbikes, Vespas, scooters. I have a problem listening to this album straight through. I've known it. I bought it right when it came out. This was the first Who album that came out when I was working in a record store, and we get piles and piles of this record. I remember actually the way it was packaged. It was on MCA Records in the States, and we got so many warped copies. This and Yellow Brick Road, because the way they're packaged, we would get so many returns of these records being warped or something. So that's one of those sense memory things that just harks back to this record. I've tried every once in a while, every year or two, I put it on thinking, oh man, oh, I'm just gonna love it, love it, love it. I think I think there's too much. It's like your jumbled mind. But I mean, it's a brilliant, obviously, piece of artwork, and I'm not going to deny Pete Townsend that. The drumming on this is incredible. Production's incredible. I can't say any more about this. Again, I know so many people that love this record. I did a rankings recently of Pink Floyd, The Wall, and I feel the same way about that. The Wall and Quadrophenia are two records that are too much, too thick. And I'm not usually one that thinks a double album should be pared down for the sake of paring it down to make it great. I understand that this is a rock opera and everything is a part of the story. I just don't think it's in the very, very top. Although it's, midway through the Who's catalog, so it's definitely, a classic record. I'm not going to take that away from it. Quadrophenia, coming at number 6. Coming at number 5, The Who Live at Leeds. Some people, when they do rankings, they don't feel they should put live albums in the mix. I normally agree with that. However, this is one of the most important live records ever made, one of the great live records ever made, one of the early great live records ever made. Originally, obviously, it's a single disc. It's powerful. It's strong. The drumming on this is incredible. Live at Leeds, track records with great poster inserts. This is a poster I had up in my room when I was a kid. This is the exact copy. Oh no, I have the second one in here. One of these I had up in my room. I just thought this was one of the coolest posters I ever had, aside from the San Francisco psychedelic posters. The original's in here too. There's contracts and things. Incredible record. Several years ago, they actually put out this expanded 3 LP set. I don't usually include these. I'm not including this as part of the countdown, but amazing. This has pretty much the full rock opera of Tommy, and I'll get into when I saw The Who the first time soon. But incredible live album, great sounding record. Again, Keith Moon's drumming on this is amazing stuff. So that's coming in at number 5, The Who. Coming number 4, The Who, My Generation. This is their debut album. This should be on any great rock and roll list, if nothing else, for the hit single, My Generation. I didn't buy this record when it came out. I bought the single, My Generation. I think My Generation, for a lot of reasons, is one of the best rock and roll singles of the 1960s. It's powerful, it's explosive. It's up there with the first Kink single, You Really Got Me, in a different way, probably even more important. What he's talking about, My Generation. This is a great record. Now, like all these beat groups of the mid-60s, early 60s, mid-60s, they covered a lot of R&B tracks, but I think The Who did them better, and Pete Townsend recorded them more dynamically and more intensely than a lot of the other groups. Powerful stuff. The Who. On here, obviously, is My Generation. I'm a Man is on here, the great blues song. Love it, love it. Muddy Water song. The Who, My Generation. Number 4. Number 3, and again, this is an album that a lot of people put at number 1, but it's Who's Next. This record really changed everything, and I can remember first hearing Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again. FM radio in San Francisco played those nonstop. The synthesizer music that Pete was working on in his Lighthouse project that never really materialized as that. It became this record. It was tightened up. Instead of another rock opera, instead of another epic, they made the record that would really push them into an arena band. But this is the arena album, the rock and roll album that has the nuances of a great rock and roll record. Great cover by Ethan Russell, a photographer who worked on the last Beatles section that's used on the Hey Jude Beatles album cover, and also did the Let It Be pictures on the cover of that album for the Beatles. Obviously, Baba O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again. I mean, Going Mobile, Getting in Tune, Song Is Over, Beautiful Ballads. Obviously, this was an important record. The year before this has come out in 1971, I think. Yeah, and just think, a year before this, not even a year, well, the Woodstock film came out, and that really pushed The Who over. Now, I saw The Who in 1972. I saw The Who 4 times. All 4 times I saw them with Keith Moon. I'll talk about that as we get into the last 2 records, but I saw them in 1969. I saw them in 1972. I saw them and twice in 1976. 76 was at Winterland. They did 2 shows. I went to both shows. They were kind of makeup shows for the 1972 show. That was a famous show at the Cow Palace where Keith Moon literally, after several songs, keeled over, passed out. I was with my buddy Larry, who was a drummer, but we were sort of in the back of the Cow Palace. And when they said, any drummers out there, we tried to move to the front of the stage, but we were so far back. And the guy, Scott, he's a trivia answer, got up and played drums for several songs with The Who. Infamous show, saw that show, tempestuous show. So the Winterland show in 1976, that only holds 5,000 people. I went to both those shows, fantastic shows. In a way, it was a smaller venue, kind of as a makeup to San Francisco after the fiasco of late 1972. But coming in number 3, everybody knows this record. Who's Next is a record that needs to be in every rock and roll collection, and it's a great record. The Who. Coming in number 3. Okay, now we're down to our top 2 records, the final 2 records. I had a hard time with these because I knew they would always be 1 and 2, but I kept flipping the order. Literally, I almost changed it again as I was going through it just right now. But number 2 is The Who Sell Out. This is the very first Who album that I bought. This is a perfect record. This is an iconic record. This is an important record. We just celebrated an anniversary. Well, not an anniversary, but they just put out this wonderful box set. Came out in 1967 originally. This is a CD box set that has demos and works in progress and outtakes. Beautiful, beautiful book. I'm not going to really go through it. Check out all the unboxing videos that are around YouTube. This is really good and it sounds great. So if you're into CDs, I highly recommend this. And since it is my favorite, or one of my favorite Who albums, this was a necessity for me. Now, let's talk about this album a little bit. 1967. The Who were really kind of at a turning point. They weren't selling a shitload of records, but this year they would do the Monterey Pop Festival that would turn into a film, but it wasn't a film that a ton of people saw like they would 2 years later or 3 years later with Woodstock. This album, the concept of this album resulted from pirate radio in the UK. And in 1967, pirate radio was outlawed by the BBC, by England. Pirate radio were these ships, Radio Caroline, Radio London, that were just out of the border, and they would play rock and roll, and they would give the BBC a run for the money because they weren't limited. They would play all this great American and British rock and roll that the BBC just wasn't playing. Pete Townsend, Kit Lambert, they had this idea of selling ads. So literally the Who sell out. As I talked about before, the Who were selling out as early as 1967. They had done a commercial for Coca-Cola, and what they wanted to do is sell ads in between the Dead Wax bands, in between songs, like to Jaguar, to just anyone who would buy the ads at that point. Apparently a lot of companies were sort of interested, but but ended up not doing it when they found out that they did only sell a few 100,000 copies. And television advertisers are used to having 1 million eyeballs on their product. Although Odorona, Heinz baked beans, they didn't buy anything. The Roto guitar, bass strings, they even sing a song about. But they were ready to write songs as commercials, their own sort of jingles to put in between the songs. That's why you hear these Radio London bits in between. And this is basically like a pirate radio show, and it's fantastic. And the single on here, I Can See for Miles, is arguably, remember I said my generation, well, this is the real first great rock and roll song, psychedelic rock and roll song in by The Who. An incredible, incredible song, an important song. The irony was, it wasn't a huge hit. It wasn't the hit it should have been in America or the UK. To me, I remember playing that because of that song all the time. The photography on this, they used art directors and advertising photographers to do this whole setup. And this was one of the most original, interesting, off-the-charts album covers. Remember, 1967, what a time for album covers. Now, one of the great opening tracks after the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday interlude, it opens up with the great Armonia in the Sky. Now, Armonia in the Sky wasn't written by Pete Townsend. It was written by Speedy Keen. Armonia in the Sky isn't sung by The Who. At least the lead is sung by Speedy Keen along with Roger Daltrey. And I didn't know that for a long time, till probably in the late 70s maybe, that I realized that or read about it or something. Great song. And in fact, that's not the real name. Pete Townsend changed the lyrics. It was Arm and Ear Sitting in the Sky. Arm, Ear, Sitting in the Sky. Speedy Keen was an artist that would go on to make this album, Thunderclap Newman. That's Speedy Keen. There was a #1 song on this album, and it was called Something in the Air. So if you haven't heard the name Speedy Keen or Thunderclap Newman, you've heard Something in the Air. It's been used in films. It's been covered by Tom Petty. It's an incredible, incredible song. And this is the album produced by Pete Townsend, Speedy Keen, who sings and wrote Armonia in the Sky on this fabulous record. Every song on here is great. This is a perfect record. A song about a tattoo, Marianne with a shaky hand. How many songs do you know that are written about a hand job? So coming in at #2, this great, fantastic album, The Who Sell Out, literally. That means #1 is Tommy. This is a perfect record. This is the epic Pete Townsend was leading up to over the last few records. This is genius. This is really an amazing sounding record. The acoustic guitars, electric guitars, an epic. What a tour de force. Obviously, you all know the story, The Blind, Deaf, Dumb Boy. Pinball Wizard, one of their great singles as well, is on here. Just a fabulous record. Here's my story about this record. I bought this record in May of 1969, right when it came out, and I wanted to buy this record. So I went to a record store called Portals to Music in the Stonestown Shopping Center, outdoor mall, right near San Francisco State College campus. The guy that worked there, I used to see there when I used to go in there a lot, and I really didn't know him, but we would chat about music once in a while. It turned out we would get to know each other, and years later, a decade later, I think, I would actually work with him at ABC Records, and his name is Roy Loney. He was a member of the Flamin' Groovies, original member of the Flamin' Groovies. Years later, also, when I knew him, he started Roy Loney and the Phantom Movers. I went in and bought this record, and he was so excited. Roy was a big Kinks fan, a big Who fan. He and I talked about this record so much, and I had only heard Pinball Wizard. I hadn't heard the whole record, and I bought it. He also told me that the Who were going to be coming to the Fillmore West, and I hadn't been to the Fillmore West. I was young. I was, 14 turning 15 years old, which is And my parents didn't want me to go to the Fillmore because it was, you know, who knows, they'll slip something in your drink, acid or something. But I bought tickets, and I can't remember if I bought them from him, if they sold it at the record store. But the first time I ever went to the Fillmore West, and the first time I saw The Who was to see The Who, and they performed the entire Tommy in June of 1969. I believe it was the Woody Herman Big Band that opened up that set. Incredible how Bill Graham would mix genres on his bills at the Fillmore West, and then later, obviously, at Winterland and all the other, the Fillmore East, too. Incredible record. Their best record as far as I'm concerned. But this and this could easily be tied at #1 for me as perfect records. Tight, concise, no, long songs that meander, not of that later period that I showed you in the records that started out number 13 and 12. Just tights. Every song is important on these records. So anyway, that's my ranking of the Who catalog. Hope you like it. Put in your selects, what you like, your orders. I'm really curious. Make any comments. And again, subjective lists. This is my list. Enjoy. Mazzy loves you.